Hey everybody, welcome back to the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ethan Nash, and it's just me today. I want to talk once again about feedback. Feedback's important, so let's talk about this today. Hey, real quick before we get started, if you enjoy this podcast, if you find value in what we're doing here on this podcast, the best way that you can support us is taking the 10 seconds that it takes to go leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this right now. It actually goes a really long ways for us. It helps spread this podcast to other people that could benefit from this. So if you could do us just a big favor, like we'd super appreciate it. Just leave us a review, 5-star review, 4-star review. Heck, I'll even take a 3-star review. If it's a 2-star review or 1-star review, I don't want it. No, just kidding. We'll take that too. But I'd appreciate it if you could just support us in that way. So thank you. All right. Now that that is out of the way, let's talk about feedback. So obviously, we've spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about how to give good feedback, how to receive feedback, questions that you can ask your team or colleagues in order to get the type of feedback that we want to get. We're all about feedback, and I think we all understand at this point that having a quote-unquote culture of feedback is going to be really essential and fundamental to having a high-functioning, high-performing team. It has to happen, especially when we're doing complex work together. Feedback matters. Now, I've been thinking a lot about feedback recently, and I've come to realize that in order to create a true culture of feedback, we actually have to expand our thinking about the types of feedback that happens within this team, within this organization. I think most often when people hear about giving feedback to each other, we think about performance-related feedback. Right? This could be better. This needs to be different. We're not following through on our commitments, etc., etc. But I've now come to learn that there are really 4 high-level categories of feedback. And I believe that the best teams, the best cultures are committed to providing feedback to each other in all 4 of these categories. So let's walk through these. Here are the 4 categories of feedback. Category 1, feedback on ideas. Category 2, feedback on performance. Category 3, feedback on skills and competencies. Category 4, feedback on style. So we have ideas, we have performance, we have skills and competencies, and we have style. Those are the 4 high-level categories. So let's walk through each one in a bit more detail, provide more context for them. So the first category, feedback on ideas. This type of feedback focuses on exploring, debating, and improving ideas. This type of feedback often involves challenging assumptions, refining thought processes, or even evaluating the practicality of proposed solutions. So for this type of feedback to thrive, teams need psychological safety. This feedback really can't thrive without some level of psychological safety. So members can feel comfortable questioning, challenging, critiquing each other's perspectives and ideas without fear of rejection or retaliation. So again, we need the psychological safety for this to work, right? The ability to speak up, disagree, without fear of being rejected or punished. Now, this type of feedback, this can be really hard to give to each other. Because when we have an idea that we really like, that idea can be our baby. We love this idea. We love this baby. And nobody wants to call somebody else's baby ugly. So that's why this feedback's hard to give. Because we're basically saying, hey, look it, I don't know if this is a good idea. I think there's a better way to go about this. I think you're missing something here. That's really hard feedback to give, but I think we get it. To be a high-performing team, we have to be able to say these things to each other. We have to be able to debate ideas. It's really fundamental for being the teams that excel. And once again, this is kind of the purpose of psychological safety, at least at some level. To be able to have these types of idea conversations, idea disagreements, idea feedback openly without it breaking us apart, without it shutting us down. So here's how this type of feedback around ideas might sound. Here's just an example. Look, I totally see where you're going with this proposal. I see it, and I like a lot of it. But have you considered the cost implications if we scale this up? Could we maybe explore some alternative approaches to maybe balance this innovation and feasibility? Okay, so just one example of how that might sound in practice of giving feedback on ideas. So that's the first category. A healthy, effective team has to be able to give feedback on each other's ideas. Category 2, performance. Now, as I said at the onset of this episode, this is usually where people's brains go when they think about giving feedback to each other, especially from a manager's perspective. So, of course, giving feedback on performance is critical. It's important, not only from a manager's perspective, but from everybody on a team. Right? The best teams, in my view, are cultures where it's not just the manager providing performance feedback, but it's everybody sharing that responsibility with each other. So, feedback on performance. This feedback is about deliverables, it's about results. Now, it's often, not always, but it's often objective and focused on tangible outcomes like deadlines, goals, or commitments. And because it's tied to measurable actions and results, this category is usually the easiest for people to address. I'm not saying those conversations are easy and all warm and fuzzy. I'm just saying they can be the easiest for us to be able to give feedback to. We feel most comfortable about giving feedback around performance because it tends to be more objective and tied to measurable results, as I said. So an example of performance feedback. Hey, look, this report was due last Friday, and I didn't receive it till Monday. And this delay, it actually causes a bottleneck for the review process. So how can we ensure some timelier submissions going forward? Just an example of what that might look like. So that's about performance. Category 3 is skills and competencies. So feedback in this category usually revolves around a person's ability to perform specific tasks or even their expertise in certain areas. It can be pretty challenging to deliver this type of feedback because it often feels more subjective and speculative as opposed to feedback just on performance. And it's particularly challenging to give this type of feedback around skills and competencies if the feedback isn't based on observable behavior. Now, of course, sometimes, and maybe even oftentimes when we give feedback on someone's skills or competencies, it is based on observable behavior. We didn't see them perform a certain skill well. But oftentimes it's more of a a hunch. It's our intuition. It's a hypothesis that they might not totally have the skills and competencies that are needed to excel in this particular area. And that's why this feedback can be hard to give. We often default to only giving feedback on things that we know are objectively true and avoid the messier, subjective stuff that's more of my hunch, more of maybe even my opinion. But again, the healthiest teams, the teams that have a lot of trust and are psychologically safe, they're willing to give this type of feedback on skills and competencies. And when we're giving feedback in these areas, this is where a tool like coaching by hypothesis can be really useful. Now, I did a short episode on coaching by hypothesis, but essentially it's rather than saying you lack this skill or competency in a very objective manner, you open it up as a guess, a hypothesis, right? Hey, my hypothesis is that you don't totally have this particular communication skill to the degree in which you need to have it to be effective in speaking with these executives, for an example. So I want to explore that together. What's your view on that? What are you seeing here? I want to test my hypothesis with you. Now, I think you can see how this would be really beneficial if teams could have these conversations openly, without it blowing up and causing a whole lot of anger and angst with each other. We can actually help each other get better with our skills and competencies. And even if we're wrong, even if the other person doesn't see it the same way that we see it, or we test our hypothesis and we find out that we were wrong about it, that's okay. We're still willing to have these conversations, even when they're not objectively true. So an example of giving feedback on skills or competencies. So in our last meeting, my experience, my view of that situation is that you struggled to articulate the data analysis. And I want to explore this with you. What was your view of the situation? My hypothesis is that it might help to spend more time honing your presentation skills or getting more familiar with these technical concepts. But I'm curious, what do you think about that? So you're approaching it as a conversation, as a way to explore this hypothesis together. Okay, so that's about skills and competencies. Now, the fourth and final category of feedback is about style. So style feedback is about how a person's behavior, communication, or interpersonal approach is showing up. So it often involves discussing how someone shows up in their interactions, including how they deliver feedback, how they manage conflict, or how they adapt to different situations. Now, of course, you could see how this could also be a skills, competencies conversation as well. But it's also sometimes true that someone might actually have those skills and competencies, but the style in which they're delivered in could use some adjustment. So again, because style is tied to perception, this one feels subjective as well, which is a reason why coaching by hypothesis could also be useful in these situations, or even using frameworks like BIR that we talked about on this podcast many times, which is explaining the behavior that you're seeing, the impact of that behavior based on your perception, and then having a conversation about potential replacement behaviors. So behavior, impact, replacement behavior. So here's an example of how this feedback might look like in practice. Hey, when you present difficult feedback, it's not always clear on what you'd like to see different. And I think it sometimes leads to confusion about what the issue is here. So I think it would be more effective to clearly state the challenge first. and then offer support to address it. But let's explore this together. What are you seeing? What's showing up for you? So there you go. We have these 4 categories: ideas, performance, skills and competencies, and someone's style. And of course, all of these can kind of overlap with each other. They bleed into each other a bit. But the big picture idea here, folks, is that the best teams are not narrowly focused on what is only objective, which is usually about performance and measurable performance. But the best teams are willing to take the risk and spend some of the trust they've earned with each other to have the feedback conversations in all 4 of these domains pretty openly. Now, when I've worked with some teams on helping them understand these 4 categories of feedback, I have a few general reflection questions that I like to ask them for them to be thinking about so they can make some adjustments in their approach to how they're giving feedback and on what they're giving feedback on. So these questions, maybe you'd want to explore them with your team. Maybe you explore these 4 categories of feedback and you ask them a few questions and you explore these questions together. The first one is, which type of feedback does this team handle most effectively right now? And why? Why are we doing this effectively? Well, let's dig into what's working here. So again, it could be performance, it could be about ideas, whatever. But let's explore what's working. Another question would be, hey, which type of feedback is the most challenging for us to give to each other or receive from each other? And why? Let's explore that together. And we can look at that at the group level. Hey, collectively as a team, what seems to be most challenging for us, or where are we maybe not seeing feedback in one of these areas? We can also look at it at the individual level. Hey, let's reflect on this personally. Where do you personally struggle giving feedback? And why? What prevents you? Is it a trust issue? Is it not knowing how to have that conversation? Let's just explore that openly with each other. Now, another reflection question might be, how do our current team dynamics support or even hinder the flow of these different types of feedback? Let's talk about those dynamics together. And I find that if we can, spend even 30 minutes or up to an hour exploring these 3 general reflection questions and then make some commitments with each other about how and what types of feedback we are willing to give to each other and receive from each other, that can be a pretty powerful step into the right direction of creating a true feedback culture. Now, for those of you that are still listening to me this far into the episode, I'm going to give you a few more questions that you might want to explore with your team. And these questions are going to be specific to each one of these 4 feedback categories. So let's start with ideas. Some questions to explore. Hey folks, do you think we have a culture where challenging ideas is welcomed? Why or why not? How often do we actively challenge each other's assumptions or refine ideas as a group? What practices could we adopt to make it easier for team members to question and improve ideas? That's about ideas. What about performance? Let's talk about some questions for that. Hey, are we consistent in addressing missed deadlines or unmet goals as a team? Do we provide clear, objective feedback when performance issues arise? And if not, what gets in the way of that? How can we ensure performance feedback focuses on improvement rather than blame? All right, let's talk about skills and competencies again. So, folks, how do we identify and address skill gaps within this team? Are we comfortable providing constructive feedback about skills or expertise? Why or why not? And what support systems, for example, coaching or development plans, could help us grow skills more effectively? And last but not least, let's talk about style. So how do we address how someone's behavior or communication style impacts the team. Let's talk about that. How can we create a safe environment for giving and receiving feedback on interpersonal style? And what's one thing we could improve in how we handle style-related feedback? All right? Now, one overarching question for all of these styles, and one I really like to use, is how can we make feedback a regular, productive part of our team culture rather than a reactive process? All right, so I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to stop droning on about this, but big picture, there's not just feedback on performance, there's feedback in these 4 different categories, and the most effective high-performing teams work to master the feedback in these 4 categories, and they create an atmosphere and environment where it's fine, it's safe, it's welcome to give feedback in all these categories. And people are still giving feedback in these 4 categories with kindness, respect, clarity, and directness. And bottom line is, we want to make feedback a regular part of what we do here, rather than the exception or a reactive process. And so figure out the mechanisms, processes, and commitments to make that a reality. Alrighty, that's all I have for you today. Until next time, peace out. Hey folks, wait, don't go yet. Please, stay with me for 1 second here. I want to let you know about a couple cool little goodies that we have available for you. If you dig this podcast, you will probably also dig our Managing with Mind and Heart newsletter. This is a monthly newsletter where we share articles that we write about, hey, how to thrive as a manager, how to lead teams that are characterized by high morale, engagement, psychological safety, care and respect, collaboration, and high performance. You can sign up for this newsletter by texting the word leading to the number 66866. Additionally, you can go to our website and sign up for the newsletter there. Our website is www.nashconsulting.com. And of course, if you're not already aware, we have our cornerstone program for leaders and managers, and it is called Managing with Mind and Heart. Go figure. This program is something that we often bring into organizations to work with all their leaders on helping them get aligned and singing off the same sheet of music with best practice management skills and behaviors. We've brought this to hundreds of organizations at this point with really good results. And if you are not able or inclined to bring our program in-house, twice a year, in the spring and in the fall, we offer this 6-day Managing with Mind and Heart leadership development program online for anybody that would like to sign up and join us. To learn more about this online course and to register, you can go to our website. Once again, that's nashconsulting.com. Or send us an email at contact@nashconsulting.com. All right, that's all. That's it. See you later. Bye.